Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Aretha. Today, I would like to talk about stress and why it is so important that we actively work on clearing it out of our system. I have always been really proud of the fact that I perform really well under pressure. When everything is happening all at once, I have laser focus and I get super productive. I get things done. But when this acute situation is over, I usually end up crashing and my body gives signs of breaking down. After a period of performing at my very best under pressure, I find that I have no energy, I have some mental fog, I have no motivation, and worst of all, I get breakouts on my face. It's almost as if when stressful things are happening, I'm holding my breath and powering into action. And then when I finally release my breath, my body just kind of falls apart. So I've decided to learn more about the stress response and what to do about it. So let's talk about what stress is. Stress is a physiological response that your body has to a perceived or real threat. So, stress is not the stuff happening around you, it's the way your body responds. It's called the stress response. And I want you to pay attention to the fact that the threats could be perceived or real. Your body doesn't know the difference. It goes into fight or flight response when it feels challenged. And part of your body's response is to release stress hormones, mainly cortisol and adrenaline. So while these hormones are helpful to help you react in a real threatening situation, they don't really have the same effect when your threat is perceived. See, if you were attacked by a bear, as soon as you felt threatened, you would probably start running. You would use that cortisol and adrenaline to move you. But if you're having a difficult conversation or you're learning news that makes you upset, you don't really get to use your cortisol or adrenaline. You're not going to start sprinting as soon as you hear bad news. So instead, these hormones stay trapped in your body. And the problem is that these hormones can stay in your body for hours after the event happened that triggered them. Maintaining high levels of cortisol over a long period of time can lead to all kinds of problems in your body. Over time, you can develop high blood pressure, heart disease, digestive issues, troubles with sleep, weight gain. So, your stress hormones have a very important purpose to keep you alive. But when your threats are perceived, they don't get used and they end up creating a lot of problems in your body. I think it's really important to understand that the stress response is what your body does automatically in reaction to different events or triggers. Stress is not how you outwardly express yourself. So, for example, even if you're really good at handling your outwardly reaction when you hear bad news, it doesn't mean that you handle the stress. So, if someone gives you really bad news and all you want to do is yell at them or tell them off or express yourself in an aggressive way, but you don't because you know how to control yourself and have a sense of decorum, you may think that you handled it really well. The problem is, even though on the outside you didn't do anything, your body may have started the stress response. So, stress is really not about how you react to the outside world or how you perform in the outside world. It's about what your body does in response to the trigger. So, this leads me to my next point. You may not even know that you are going through a stress response. I think a lot of us think that if we handle a situation really well and we have a good poker face, that we are managing our stress, but we are not, because if your body went into fight or flight response and released cortisol and adrenaline, you are not done. Just walking away from the situation doesn't mean that you handled the stress. Your body is still under fight or flight response. So wouldn't it be perfect if we could tell when our body was going through a stress response? Believe it or not, some people can feel it. And maybe you can feel it in certain instances. Think about when you are asked to do something in front of a large audience. If you've ever been asked to speak, how do you feel right before you go on the stage? Do your palms get sweaty? Does your heart beat faster? Do you start sweating in your underarms? All of those could be indicators of a stress response. I know for me, when the stress response is triggered, I can feel it in my neck and shoulders. It feels like a cold sensation going down from the base of my neck, down my shoulders, into my upper back. And when I feel this, it feels like a cold liquid going through my veins. I know that I'm having a stress response. Even if I have my poker face on and I'm handling it really well on the outside, I know that my body is going into fight or flight. Another thing I experience when I feel really stressed, it's the sensation that the bottom of my stomach is dropping and I can hear my heart beating. That's when I know that I have reached the next level of stress response. So hopefully you can start to recognize signs within your body that you are experiencing a stress response. Because you may not always intellectually understand it or realize that you've gone into fight or flight, but your body will know. But even if you cannot identify the exact moment that you went into fight or flight response, I think it is safe to assume that most of us encounter triggers throughout our day and that at some point we build up that adrenaline and cortisol in our bodies. So let's take a brief detour and talk about stressors, those events that actually trigger your stress response. So there are some stressors that we all recognize, like work deadlines, pressure at the office, being stuck in traffic, difficult coworkers or difficult managers. And then there's financial stress, worrying about how you're going to pay your bills. And then, of course, there are big stressors like unexpected life events, losing someone, getting fired, having your car stolen, things like that. I think we all understand that those kinds of things cause stress. But there are a lot of smaller reasons that we get stressed that have nothing to do with work, have nothing to do with finances. It could be minor things that you deal with every day that keep you in a state of low-grade stress. I imagine that feeling hurried, like you're running late everywhere all the time, causes a certain amount of stress. If you can never find your keys or your wallet when you're already running late, that adds to the stress. Open loops that you keep in your mind, things you mean to go back to, that causes stress too. There are quite a few minor stressors that are within our control and are just part of our everyday life, and we learn to live with them. But they cause a stress response because they get you all worked up. You start your day running around late, you can't find your keys, and then you hit traffic, and then you get to work, and there's a deadline, and everything just piles up. Whether or not you show it on the outside, your body is going through it. And if you are someone who has extrasensory sensitivities, then you could constantly be triggered by even more things around you. Clothes that don't feel quite right that you have to keep adjusting throughout the day, tags in the back of your shirt that keep rubbing on your neck, construction noises down the street while you're trying to focus. All these things that you learn to live with, they are creating a layer of stress in the background that is constant. So now let's talk about what to do about all these stressors and all the stress that we experience on a daily basis. So the first thing everyone wants to do is remove the stressors. If there are things within your control that are creating discomfort and friction in your day, remove them as best as you can. But be mindful that you cannot remove every single stressor from your life. It's just impossible. But keep in mind that just because you remove a particular stressor from your life doesn't mean that the stress response it already triggered is done. So if you're hanging out with someone who really irritates you and they've caused that stress response, you can leave and go somewhere they're not. But the stress response is already initiated, it's already in your body. So now you have to do something with this adrenaline and this cortisol that's already in your body. And that was a big aha moment for me. I thought as long as I eliminated the cause of the stress, I was good. But that's not true. Removing stressors is a great place to start. But the other piece that's equally important, if not more important, is what you do with the stress that is already present in your body. You have to have a way to clear out these hormones from your system. So what I'm saying is that you have to close the loop on the stress response, even though you may have eliminated the trigger that caused it in the first place. So a really good way to process the cortisol and the adrenaline that are already in your body is to do something physical. Exercise. I know exercise is a solution to everything, but it really is. 20 minutes of moderate exercise will help you clear a lot of that stress response. It doesn't have to be very intense physical exercise. It could just be a walk. It could be dancing. It could be shaking your body. Whatever gets your body moving will help you clear the stress response. Another good way to clear the cortisol out of your body is to produce more oxytocin. And oxytocin is the love hormone. Oxytocin is released when we spend some time with people we like, we talk to a friend, we hug someone, we spend time with our pets, we laugh, other things that make us feel good. So ideally, you would have something in your daily routine where you spend 20 minutes countering all the cortisol you've built up throughout the day. 20 minutes of walking, laughing, talking to a friend, hanging out with someone you like, spending time with your pets, all of it counts. If you get into the habit of clearing out the cortisol and adrenaline on a daily basis, you give yourself a fresh start. But if you don't clear your cortisol regularly out of your body, then it keeps building up. Because you don't encounter just one triggering event per day, there are millions of things that are happening all the time that could be triggering you without you even fully realizing it. So, knowing that this is happening and you probably have some cortisol built up, you should probably think about what you need to do as part of your daily life to make sure you have an outlet to release that cortisol. A few takeaways from the video should be that stressors are all around us. It's not just at work, it's not just your boss, it's not just money. It could be your living situation, it could be your space around you. The second takeaway is that the stress response is how your body internally reacts to the stressor. So even though you may have a good poker face and you feel like you're handling yourself like a champ, you may still be experiencing a stress response inside. And the third takeaway is that we should all have something in our daily routine that allows us to release the extra cortisol that we've built up throughout the day so we don't keep going from day to day with a low grade of cortisol that slowly builds up over time. And the last takeaway is that the stress response stays in your body for a long time. And because there are so many stressors around us, it's very likely that you don't finish clearing out the first stress response and then you run into another trigger and then you add more cortisol. And before that's out, you run into another thing and you add even more cortisol. So you can start to see how this builds up in your system over time and how that can cause long term damages. You owe it to yourself to take care of your body and clear it out. That's it for this video. Remember to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.